So at some point prior to 83, when Return of the Jedi came out, Kenner decided to try something a little bit different. A little bit different with the Star Wars line. And the story goes that when they were conceptualizing the action figures, one of the guys at Kenner said, "How about we make them about this big?" And another one grabbed a ruler and it was 3 3/4 inches. Makes for good copy, but there's also the fact that they were prototyping the original Star Wars figures using Fisher Price Adventure People. So I don't know how much of the "I held my fingers up and the other guy grabbed a ruler" story I actually buy. But anyway, after doing figures this big and doing the large size action figures, they didn't dare call them dolls, about 12 to 15 inches, I think, was the range on those. Well, R2 and the Jawa were shorter. But that kind of petered out. I think they only made 2 of the large size action figures for The Empire Strikes Back, Boba Fett, IG-88. All the rest were for the first film. And it was like, okay, these aren't doing the business we thought they would. And doing figures this big kind of limited us to the scope we could do with vehicles and playsets. So if we went down in size, we could do more playsets, we could do more vehicles at a lower price point. Actually, Battlestar Galactica had the idea first because they had their Vipers and Cylon Raiders at a smaller scale with little 1-inch jointed pilots, plastic pilots. So I think Mattel was a little bit ahead of the curve on that. And Kenner, when they tried the micro collection in the 80s, early 80s, then I feel like they were still ahead of the industry because it really didn't seem to catch on until Galoob and the Micro Machines and the Action Fleet, etc., etc., etc. But it was in this house one Christmas that I got a bunch of micro collection stuff. I mentioned in a previous video that I'm going to be taking pictures of my Star Wars figures for an album on Facebook called 365. Every day I upload a new photo. I'm well into Return of the Jedi now. I've already banked droids and Ewoks. I've got all those photos taken, but there's not going to be enough for 365. Even with as many variants as I own, it's not going to come close to 365. So I'm thinking, what do I do when I post the last action figure? Well, obviously I can do the 12-inch dolls, but that's only going to be about a dozen more photos. And then the only thing that I could think of that might stretch me out to that 365 mark. And I said on day one, I said, we'll see how far we get. I made no promises that there would be a photo every day of 2022. But Scott Horn had been doing an album the past couple of years that I really enjoyed seeing every day. And I thought, I want to try something like that. So, my backdrop for all these photos is this Christmas foil wrapping paper. It's actually transparent because I've noticed in a couple of photos of mine, you can actually see text on the cardboard box that was under the action figures. Nobody's commented on that yet, but I caught it once or twice. So I need to photograph my micro collection against this backdrop. The only thing is, I haven't actually taken my micro collection out of storage in about 15 years. So this is going to be kind of fun for me, and I thought, what better place to do it than the place that I first enjoyed these toys on a Christmas. I opened them, I remember playing with them on that coffee table in there, which is now at my house in Alabama, and I remember playing with them on the kitchen table with my grandmother because I can specifically remember being unaccustomed to the density and weight of the little metal figures, and every time I went to pick one up, I would drop it and chip the paint. So a lot of my figures I replaced when I was a little older. So some of these might be touched up, some of these might not be my originals, but the essence of the collection is still here. Ooh, shouldn't have had those burritos. The essence of the collection is still here in this gigantic Rubbermaid snap topper that would hold 96 quarts of liquid if it was liquid in there. So Now then, take the lid off. And the only thing I've done is actually combine everything into one location, because the figures themselves were in one area of storage, and they are all in individual Ziploc bags inside of a giant Ziploc bag, and it's marked Micro Collection. And so lots and lots of little figures here, and there's a diagram, because I couldn't always store them displayed. So what I had done was take a printer's tray, an antique printer's tray that my mom gave me, and I haven't located that yet. And these were hang on the wall. I mentioned this in a video that I shot in my bedroom at my mom's house back in 2018. There used to be a printer's tray that hung right on the wall next to the rightmost closet door, and it held my Micro Collection die-cast figures. So if I can find that printer's tray, I'm also going to take a group shot of them all. I might even go to Mom's house and stick a nail in the wall and hang it on the wall where it used to hang. But one thing that this demonstrates is that there were so many multiple poses of characters, because these figures weren't posable, they were in locked solid poses, that what I had to do was draw what they looked like or describe their pose. Snowtrooper firing, Snowtrooper walking, Vader striding, Stormtrooper firing, Stormtrooper running, Stormtrooper hit, Stormtrooper crouched. Yeah, so this is amazing. I have a little diagram that's probably moot now that shows exactly how to recombine the foam pieces for the Micro Collection Death Star back into a single sheet of foam. Wow. That's impressive that I had foresight to do that. The foam's probably so rotted now I couldn't possibly use it, but you never know. All right, we will find out as we dig into this box. Come on an exploration of the past with me, if you will. Now, before we get into the figures and before we get into the playsets and vehicles, there's also this. There were some planned playsets for the Micro Collection that were never finished, never completed. And this is a fan-made replica of one, which is the Bacta tank. And off the top of my head, I can't think of the person's name who made this. I can reconstruct it on the forums at Rebel Scum if need be. But whatever glue he used did not fare too well in storage, because components came back apart. Some of it I know is cast in resin. Some of it appears to be styrene. And I'm not sure where this little piece goes. This flaked off the other day and I couldn't tell where it had come from. So anyway, there is my replica Bacta tank for the Kenner Micro Collection. I'm going to set that down, because since purchasing that and some little replica figures, I have never put those replicas with the real collection. These were in a third location, awaiting the day that I finally hauled that out. And here are some figures that were never made. So this is a Bespin Guard, pretty good replica, because whoever cast this in plastic hand painted them before sending them to me. And here is another one, but I said, hey, if you ever make those for sale, let me know. And he said, I have some, but they're in a shadow box diorama, and they've got some glitches. So this is where he had glued them into place in the shadow box. But he made me a really good price on them, so I said, okay. That guy's got a couple places on him. This is a replica of Bespin Han. So, looks like he's got manacles in place. And he's got a little bit of scuff. He might have been in that same shadow box. An Ugnaught holding 3PO's leg, but it's a silver leg. So, and again, little glitch on the back where it was glued into the shadow box. And I've never checked to see if like using a solvent on them could take some of that off the back. It seemed to just be raised plastic, so I didn't mess with it too much. Now, two things in here aren't even micro collection. They are Galoob Micro Machines Action Fleet characters, but they fit the scale so well. So there's 21B and FX7 from a set that, if I'm not mistaken, had artwork on the box by Dave Dorman, right? And I was at a convention one time in Louisville, Kentucky, and actually met Dave Dorman, and I told him how cool I thought it was that a company had used his Droids artwork on a Galoob package of, Droids playset and everything. And he goes, yeah, I was surprised to see that too. Would have been nice to get paid for it. It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, hit a button there. So here is the other half of the Luke from the custom Bacta tank playset, and he would go right there. You can see he used like a black rubber band, and on camera, I just flaked off another piece of it. Great. He glued a black rubber band there for the part that suspends Luke, and over time, it just it didn't fare too well. I showed you this Bespin guard that he's got a little bit of a glitch where he was glued into something. But check this out. I've also got the same figure in plastic, painted silver. So that's a curiosity. Here's a second plastic resin copy of the Luke from the Bacta tank. Getting down to the nitty gritty here. I'm trying to save the most impressive pieces for last. There was a period in my collecting when I didn't take detailed notes. I just sort of went, that's interesting. This appeals to me. I want this, and just stuck it on a shelf, and I have no provenance for it. So anyway, the older the memories are, ironically, the sharper they are for me. So I guess they were so formative at the time. And then as my collection grew and grew and grew, it's like my brain couldn't store every detail. So I apologize for the later things being less detailed for you. All right, so Galoob 21B and FX7, Kenner 21B, and that guy's made of metal. And before anybody gets upset about me dropping that on this kitchen table, it dropped onto the plastic. So this is a legit prototype, to the best of my knowledge, for 21B who was never produced, unpainted. So I have that guy. I have a resin casting of FX7, which is allegedly the Kenner sculpt. Every time I put my elbows on the bubble wrap, it makes a pop. So excuse me if you hear some popping noises. Then there was a big to-do about stormtroopers in gold metal instead of silver metal. And I found one for a decent price, and I bought one just to have it. And then I've got 3 versions here of Chewbacca. One in white resin, one in colored resin, and one in metal. So this is a Chewie with a gap in his back that's intentional. And the gap holds one of these. So we could put that one on the little peg there if it'll stay. It might not. And I don't want to press too hard. This one actually has some bubbling in the resin. And then a little C-3PO in pieces would go in there. So it was sort of like Chewie with 3PO on his back, but it'd be 2 metal figures and a plastic bag connecting them, right? So I've got it in that color. I've got it in Chewie in white, and I've got a bag that's this color, and I've got a 3PO in white. All right, I don't know how in focus this stuff is, but I'm going to be taking as detailed photos as I can of it soon. And then this is the metal Chewie, and I've got a dark bag for him, and a little metal 3PO. So, all right, so I've got 21B in metal, Chewbacca and 3PO in metal, and in addition to the resin Ugnaught, I have an unpainted metal Ugnaught as well. Those are some of my prototypes and customs of toys that have never joined the rest of the collection. This bag would be all of the other figures. And some of these I can see are bare metal. One of the theories that I heard was that the gold Stormtrooper was a test of the mold and the metal to see if they could do 3PO, because he's an unpainted figure. He's just bare gold metal, and he looks great. But you can see at the bottom of his base that that's the color he's molded in, and the rest of them are in this like pewter color or whatever. This is a set of unpainted figures, or probably more likely somebody stripped the paint off of production figures. And you know what? That's a pretty genius idea. I mean, if you had a bunch of these figures in your collection and the paint was just, you know, horrible on them, like here's a really messed up Chewie, and you can see how they would just get dinged up and they wouldn't look quite as good anymore. Luke, with his bare metal showing through in almost all places. That could possibly be some that I attempted to strip the paint off of or customize, but then here are more that are a little cleaner. This is Luke Stormtrooper, Han Stormtrooper, and the same Stormtrooper that I've got in gold there, I see him here in just bare metal as well. So if I did buy these and they were stripped by somebody, wow, they look great compared to the ones that I look like I attempted to strip myself. So this Stormtrooper and this Stormtrooper, both in the running pose, and somewhere in one of these bags is the painted version, the painted equivalent of those. All right, I feel like it would be best to jump to playsets next before we jump to little people. So those are the pieces that aren't even my micro collection. So we will get into the micro collection stuff in part 2. Thank you for watching.